Guys, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our SwiftUI tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at sliders in SwiftUI. Now, what are sliders? Well, sliders, simply put, are a type of control that allows you to drag a like a knob or a sometimes it's called a thumb along a track to adjust a given value. All right, so in UIKit they're used quite extensively, including in setting screens and stuff like that. They're used the same way in SwiftUI, but they are much simpler to implement in SwiftUI, and there are quite a few customizations to them in SwiftUI. In AppKit, we have horizontal and vertical sliders, as well as circular sliders, but we don't have the circular slider in SwiftUI, and we only have a horizontal linear slider in SwiftUI. We don't have like a linear vertical one, although you could make one yourself by rotating the slider view, and that would work, right? But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to show you how you can use a slider practically, right? So let's go ahead and go into Xcode. And the first thing that we want to do is we need to create a state variable, because our slider, the value that we're adjusting is a bit of state, right? So every time we move that knob, the thumb, the state updates, and therefore the view, our user interface will it'll re-render. Okay, so at the top of our structure here, we need to create a state variable that is of type double or float, because the state variable that our slider takes has to be a binary floating point, and double or float both meet those. They both meet that, because they both implement binary floating point, or rather, they conform to that. So we're gonna go ahead and say at state private var so at state, not at stepper. Come on, Xcode. At state private var, and we're gonna call this. We're gonna call this degrees. All right. So degrees. And we're going to make this a double, and this is going to be a 0. All right, cool. So now that we have that created, what we're going to do is inside of our body, we are going to have two things. The first thing we're going to have three things. We're going to have a circle. We're going to have the slider, or well, maybe not even a circle. We're going to have a, we're going to have a kind of a circle with an image. So there's going to be an image in the foreground, or the background, and an image in the foreground. And then we're going to have the slider and our text. Now this text is going to show the current value of our slider. And then the slider is going to adjust the rotation of our image, which is going to be an SF symbol. And then the circle as its background is just going to be a simple stroked circle to kind of give it that extra bit of an interesting look. Kind of give it an interesting effect. So what we will do first is we'll have a circle, or rather not. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. An image, and this image is going to be an SF symbol. This SF symbol, we'll say, is going to be the Swift SF symbol. To keep it simple, we're going to do .resizable and scaled to fit with a frame, excuse me, a frame of, let's say, 300 by 300. All right, cool. Then we're going to set some padding here. Padding. And we'll say we'll have a padding of about 50. So a decent amount of padding. Then we'll have a background. All right, and then this background is going to be a circle. Where the stroke is going to be color dot, let's say, orange. And a line width of 5. All right. Nothing too crazy. But after that, what we're going to have is we're going to have another modifier. This is going to be dot rotation effect. Now, this modifier is what will allow us to rotate our image. And this takes in an angle. Now, what we can do is we can say dot, and then in our autocomplete, or in our code complete, we have a couple options. We have radians, and then we have degrees. We want degrees. And then inside of this degrees, we need to give it a double, which is going to be how many degrees we want to rotate this. And so with that, we will pass it our state variable, degrees. Like that. And that's our image. That's our image successfully our image successfully completed. All right. Excuse me. So next, let's create our slider. So to create a slider, we need to say capital S slider. And inside of our code completion, we're going to go with this initializer. So the first parameter is our value, which is a binding to a binary floating point. And we'll say $degrees for that. So now our slider has a binding to our double. The next one is a label. And for this, we will open up a closure. Well, I guess what we can do, because it didn't give me the range, the next value should be the range. So we'll say in let's see. All right, so what we'll do here is we will just fill this in manually. So first parameter is going to be value, which will be degrees, like that. The second parameter will be a range that we want our slider to land within. So in now this is going to be a closed range, and so we want this to be 0.360. All right. And so that is our range. And then the last thing that we need is a label. So I'm going to make this a trailing closure. And the label will be simply put text rotation. And that should be it. All right. Finally, we're going to have our text where we display our rotation. So we'll say text, and this will be a string representation of our degrees. Like that. All right. So now if we save this and we run it, we get a build succeeded. And so here's our user interface. We have our image with our circle background and all that stuff. And we can see our label for the slider as rotation. And there's our slider. So let's start adjusting the value here. So you can see as we adjust the value, as the value adjusts, the image begins to rotate. And so right now the slider's at 40%. And we can see 140 degrees is its current rotation. What about 30%? Well, 108. 20%? 72 point so-and-so percent. Or degrees, rather. So you can see how, so you can kind of see how a slider is used to adjust those values. Now, you saw what that looks like on, you see what that looks like on the Mac. Let's quickly take a look at what the user interface looks like in the iOS simulator. So here we go. Let's say the 10th generation iPad. Just so we have a nice big canvas that we can work with. Let it load and, do its thing, obviously, because we're just booting the thing up, right? Obviously, it's going to take a little bit. But let me, while this is loading, I'm going to kind of explain to you, too, how, you can specify how much the slider increments by. Right now, it increments it should increment by 1, I believe. With a screen reader, it will try to do it in a different, it'll try to increment it at a different incrementing level. About the same as it would if you held down the Option key, much like it would in UIKit or not so much UIKit but AppKit on the Mac. All you need to do really is after the closed range, specify a step parameter, and we'll show that here in a second. So I'm going to actually change the appearance of our iPad. There we go. Now it's in dark mode, and you can see our image as well as the slider and the text alongside it. All right. So we can also adjust it here. And so you can kind of see how that works. Let's go back into Xcode. And with our slider, let's see. Okay. All right. We can then add a step parameter. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm in the wrong line. There we go. We'll say step. And so this is going to be, as it says, a double stride, but essentially it can just be any sort of double or floating point value. So we'll say 0.1 is going to be the step. So every single time we adjust it, that's what it'll do. We'll run this again. All right. Let's see. Okay. Okay, we have an error. There we go. All right. So we have another issue. And we will quickly try to figure out what this issue is. Okay. Save that, run it. Okay, there we go. And now, every time it rotates that teeny tiny amount. So I'm kind of holding down the up arrow, like I'm holding down the key combination in VoiceOver to increment the slider, and you can see it slowly but surely begins to rotate. Okay? So that pretty much does it for how we can use sliders to affect other views, and just how we can use a slider to do something practical in SwiftUI. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.